Now, well, why are we here? Well, I'm here because I'm forced to make radio. This is not one of my hobbies or something. It's not that I like making radio so much that I do this once a week. And it has to do with a consciousness shift, a total breakdown of the world as you know it. Because your world as you know it depends on the view that you have of it. And your view has been 100% manipulated. There is no thing, what you call reality, that is actually real. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to break down all the nonsense that has been brought forth by other media like schools and radio and parents and peer pressure and on we can go. And there is a reason why it was easy to fool us, because I was a zombie myself. And before I woke up, I was kind of walking around like, what's going on here? I saw so many conflicting grammar, so to speak, so many conflicting facts, ideas, doublethink, which I came upon reading from a book that we had to read on school. Doublethink, you see that a lot, and I didn't fall for it. And actually, I thought other people didn't fall for it either, but they do. Most of the people are so stupid, they don't even realize they're so stupid. That's why the term awake and zombie are at the right place, so to speak. Especially when you're awake and you can see back into your own past and realize you were a zombie. So, I'm not here to give you a new platform from which to build on. You have to do that yourself. I'm only here to break it down. Any sticks that you hold, like religion or politics, I'm here to break all of that down. Now, the reason why it is so easy for them to fool us is because we have been deprived of the knowledge of how to learn. In school, you get taught what to learn. You could compare it to going to a music school, then learning a song, then playing the song, and then you have to go back to the music school to learn the next song. Okay, that's ridiculous. In a music school, they should be teaching you what music is, so you can make music yourself. So music is one of the 7 liberal arts. And we're not going to go into that because music is far away for now. We're going to deal with the trivium and other related subjects. Because it is because of the trivium that we don't see through the lies that have been put before us. So, last week I was reading from The Lost Tools of Learning. We're going to continue there. And remember, you can call in 716-213-6816. And if I don't pick up immediately, please be patient, or if you can, give me a shout out in the chat first. That's at solvinoradio.com. And we can see what we do there. So, to answer your question again, yes, you can influence this radio by 2 ways. The phone, 716-213-6816. 6816 or the chat. Now here we go, I'm going to continue. So we were at, so far, except of course for the Latin, our curriculum contains nothing that departs very far from common practice. The difference will be felt rather in the attitude of the teachers, who must look upon all these activities less as subjects in themselves than as a gathering together of material for use in the next part of the trivium. What that material actually is only of secondary importance, but it is as well that anything and everything which can usefully be committed to memory should be memorized at this period, whether it is immediately intelligible or not. The modern tendency is to try and force rational explanations on a child's mind too early in age. Intelligent questions, spontaneously asked, should of course receive an immediate and rational answer. But it is a great mistake to suppose that a child cannot readily enjoy and remember things that are beyond its power to analyze, particularly if those things have a strong imaginative appeal, as for example, Kubla Khan, an attractive jingle, like some of the memory rhymes for Latin genders, or an abundance of rich, resounding polysyllables, like the Quincenque Volt. This reminds me of the grammar of theology. Okay, so theology, it not only has a grammar, apparently, so I don't know exactly how to understand that, but theology is one of the things that go past the 7 liberal arts. I mean, not go past, but those are one of the things you get into after you have had your grammar, logic, and rhetoric. That's the trivium. And a quadrivium is out of my head. Math, geometry, music, and astronomy, if I'm correct. And so after that, there's a couple of things like philosophy and theology that come after that, okay? And so, again, then, here you see, this reminds me, she says, this reminds me of the grammar of theology. The stories of history are getting so mingled up and so twisted and turned that it's not funny anymore. I mean, we don't even know where we come from, right? And that is one of the things that Michael Cremo also is talking about in his appearances on the different radio shows that he does. So you can call in the number 716-213-6816. You can also join the chat at solvinoradio.com. Post any questions there. Charlie G, I don't know. Maybe you can get Charlie G to come on and debate Michael. Charlie is a pretty small box. It comes to E.T. Live. When it comes to E.T. Live. Charlie G. Oh, Giuliani. Well, we could, we could like refer him to a podcast or something. But I know he's at his girlfriend's in the weekend, so he can't make radio. That's one of the reasons why he's not on with me. Because it's weekend and he doesn't do radio then. He does radio 5 days a week, so, Anyway, that about Michael Cremo. Let's continue here. She's reading this at Oxford class, 1947. Continuing, this reminds me of the grammar of theology. I shall add it to the curriculum because theology is the mistress science, without which the whole educational structure will necessarily lack its final synthesis. Those who disagree about this will remain content to leave their pupils' education still full of loose ends. This will matter rather less than it might, since by the time that the tools of learning have been forged, the student will be able to tackle theology for himself. And that is also what I say. I'm only here to break down the nonsense that you've been fed. And then you have to use your own brain to tackle things for yourself. Continuing, and will probably insist upon doing so and making sense of it. Yeah, I mean, that's only natural to me. I mean, I don't know how it is with these zombies still walking around there, that there's not a nagging voice in the back of their head trying to make sense of things. I mean, that's a natural thing to do, right? Still, it is as well to have this matter also handy and ready for the reason to work upon. At the grammatical age, therefore, we should become, should become acquainted with the story of God and man in outline. The Old and New Testament presented as parts of a single narrative of creation, rebellion, and redemption. And also with the Creed, the Lord's Prayer, and the Ten Commandments. At this stage, it does not matter nearly so much that these things should be fully understood, as that they should be known and remembered. Excuse me. Remember, it is material that we are collecting. Okay, so when, for instance, researching mainstream media sites, there is no harm in that as long as you know what you're dealing with. Okay, it's a gathering of information. Continuing, it is difficult to say at what age precisely we should pass from the first to the second part of the trivium. Generally speaking, the answer is so soon as the pupil shows himself disposed to pertness an intermittable argument. Or, as a schoolmaster correspondent of mine once elegantly puts it, when the capacity for abstract thought begins to manifest itself. For as, in the first part, the master faculties are observation and memory, so in the second, the master faculty is the discursive reason. In the first, the exercise to which the rest of the material was, as it were, keyed, was the Latin grammar. In the second, the key exercise will be formal logic. It is here that our curriculum shows its first sharp divergence from modern standards. This repute into which formal logic has fallen is entirely unjustified, and its neglect is the root cause of nearly all those disquieting symptoms which we may note in the modern intellectual constitution. Logic has been discredited, partly because we have fallen into a habit of supposing that we are conditioned almost entirely by the intuitive and the unconscious. Yeah, that is also one thing that bugs me personally. You hear not only people that supposedly studied for it, but also people that don't study the subject talk about this 95% of actions that humans have is supposedly driven by the unconscious. That's like saying you're a zombie. Okay? I mean, you should have control of your own thoughts. You should be the boss of your own thoughts. And maybe, sometimes a thought can come up in your head and you ask yourself, where does that come from? But you should be so self-aware that you are the creator of your own thoughts. Instead of repeating stuff that you hear on the internet or on TV. Continuing with my thoughts from before the break about this unconsciousness stuff. I think you're only unconscious if you're not awake. Awake and aware are two words can be used as the same meaning. And if you're not aware, you are unconscious, okay? It's like living in a dream, then you are unconscious. You should not be unconscious. The problem with being unconscious is that it's, like I said in the first segment, people are so stupid, they don't know how stupid they are. And the same goes with unconsciousness. If you live your life in unawareness, in unconsciousness, you're not conscious of the fact that you are unconscious. But I believe there must be something nagging in the back of your head, if that is true, if you are unconscious. Something is screaming to break out. It must be. Or you're already totally dead. You're not a walking zombie, like half alive, half dead. No. So, this unconscious thing, your actions being controlled by your unconscious is only true if you are a zombie. So continuing here, there is no time now to argue whether this is true. I will content myself with observing that to neglect the proper training of the reason is the best possible way to make it true, and to ensure the supremacy of the intuitive, irrational, and unconscious elements in our makeup. A secondary cause for the disfavor into which formal logic has fallen is the belief that it is entirely based upon universal assumptions that are either unprovable or tautological. That this is not true. Not all universal propositions are of this kind. But even if they were, it would make no difference, since every syllogism, or syllogism, whose major premise is in the form all A is B, can be recast in the hypothetical form. Logic is the art of arguing correctly. If A, then B. The method is not invalidated by the hypothetical character of A. Indeed, the practical utility of formal logic today lies not so much in the establishment of positive conclusions as in the prompt detection and exposure of invalid inference. Logic is used to get rid of the nonsense that is put before you. Let us now quickly review our material and see how it is to be related to dialectic. On the language side, we shall now have our vocabulary and morphology at our fingertips. Henceforward, we can concentrate more particularly on syntax and analysis, the logical construction of speech, and the history of language, how we come to arrange our speech as we do in order to convey our thoughts. History of language. Interesting. I was researching trivium in my own language, and I found out that there were, around 1500, when there was a revival of the trivium all around Europe, that there were people who were already then, in around 1550, speaking about how the Dutch language was getting contaminated. Because as it was in the 1500s, somewhere around there, a little bit before 1550, he claimed, this author, that the Dutch language was perfect. And that all kinds of things have begun to sneak in, he said. And that's 1550, my God! What have they done to our language by now? You can see that, for instance, with the word liberal. Or the word conspiracy theorist. Things like that. Liberal is from Greek or Latin, I'm not sure. Liber, which means free, or liberal, befitting a free man. Okay, so it has nothing to do with all the bad, negative things that come to mind when we say liberal nowadays. It also seems to have a tie to library. It seems that in the old language, I'm thinking this is Latin, but I'm not sure, but that liber not only meant free, but also book. So there you get library. There may be a link there that you need to read books to be free, okay? You need to inform yourself and arm yourself with the trivium, or else you're not going to be free. And this is so true. Just look at society today. They've not been taught anything of the trivium, and look how enslaved they are. Not by change, but via the mind. They're all mind-controlled. And they wouldn't have been mind-controlled if they have had armor to protect themselves against all the nonsense. And so the history of language interests me personally very much. I also try and look up words in their etymological dictionary. They sometimes it helps understanding things. That also has to do with the history of language. Etymology has to do with what's the origin of our words. Okay? So, an example, and this is not to say that all the words are made this way, but an example would be the word sissing. For instance, what a snake does. A snake sisses, right? So why do we call that sissing? Because the sound is like sis, you know? That's where they say, the etymologists say, that's where the word comes from. Or boom! I mean, simple, right? That's kind of like etymological way of looking at words. Words can change also, but there are certain rules that you need to apply when you're doing etymological research as to how words can change. Sometimes words change so much that only via the stories that cling to these words, like for instance, the old Egyptian and the old Indian and the Greek gods, they all have different names, but they can be stuck together because of the stories that cling to these names. There was a strange happening in the Netherlands 2 days ago, I believe. All of a sudden, there were 2 towers on fire. 2 towers on fire, huh? What does that remind you of? Because I'm so conditioned, it reminds me of 9/11. But two freaking towers on fire, and we were out of radio because they were radio towers. One in Lopik and another one in, I don't remember, Nunspeet or something. So how do two towers catch fire? Okay? It's a bit of a coincidence there that is half raising a red flag here for me. What's going on? And so this was asked by a radio host on the Radio 1 here. And the answer was, we don't know. So there's an outbreak of fire and you don't know what happened. So then that makes my red half flag stay up there, you know. It's like no answer as to why those were catching on fire all of a sudden. I should check for news because I haven't today, but maybe today they came with an answer. But so that's strange. I thought that's strange. Two towers catching on fire on the same day. And lots of people out of radio. Well, not really, because the AM was still up. And, of course, the internet was still up. Most people use cable anyway. But there are still analog receivers and transmitters. So that's for the people in the outskirts. Well, not necessarily for the people. It's against the people. Nothing technology-wise is ever given to the people because it's good for us. It's only used against us, as far as I can see, all this technology. So let's see if we can make some better use of this technology. If you want to call in, you can do so. 716-213-6816. And I'll try and keep an eye on that while I continue reading here. Our reading will proceed from narrative and lyric to essays, argument and criticism. And the pupil will learn to try his own hand at writing this kind of thing. Many lessons on whatever subject will take the form of debates, and the place of individual or choral recitation will be taken by dramatic performances, with special attention to place in which an argument is stated in dramatic form. I was reminded of something and I wanted to say something about it and now I forgot. Not so nice. Oh yeah, now I remember. Because she said here, many lessons on whatever subject will take the form of debates. I have good news in that respect. One of my nieces, she's a bit older now, but when she was still going to school, I asked her about did she still get history lessons in school? And this was a couple of years ago. And she said, yeah, we still do. And I said, well, are they already including the events of 9/11 into the history lessons? And she said, yes. And I asked, well, how does that go? And she said, well, actually, it's funny that you ask because we are discussing it at the moment. And I said, discussing it? Yeah, she said. The teacher is is trying to explain what happened, and the children are allowed to ask questions. And I'm like, okay. And I gave her some questions, right? Because she said that the teacher said that the planes caused the towers to crash. And I said, okay, well, tell this to your teacher, that there are 74 core columns in those towers made of steel, and that you need welding equipment to melt steel. And that fire from gasoline or whatever it is that they put in planes doesn't reach high enough temperature. It can weaken the steel, but not to the extent that the top of the building should all of a sudden break off, pretend to be falling at an angle, and then disappear completely, okay? That's ridiculous. Doesn't happen like that. And so she did indeed go to the teacher with this information about steel and melting temperatures and 11 seconds for a 412-meter building. Yeah, in Dutch we say meters. 3 feet is about 1 meter. So she said that she told them that, and now they were still discussing it. So that's a good sign, so to speak, from the school that she went to, at least. I went to other schools as well, but unfortunately, they're not even giving history lessons anymore in those schools. And the history that you get here in the Netherlands at school, probably most of it you're going to get in the first 6 years of your school life, of your detention into jail. That's a better way of explaining it. You're not allowed to leave school, are you? If you do, things are going to get nasty for either you or your parents. So I put my parents through hell because I was skipping school so much. I thought it was ridiculous, the whole school thing. So that about school. And one small point of light in the history lessons, that at least they are discussing the events of September 11, 2001, and not just saying this is how it is and the 19 hijackers did it and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's cool. Continuing here. Let's see. Mathematics, algebra, geometry, and the more advanced kind of arithmetic. Okay, we'll continue that after the break, because I hear the music coming in. Stay tuned, people. This is the Orion Talk Radio Network. Check out the site oriontalkradio.com. We will be back after the break, people. Stay tuned. I'm your host, Walter.
The Orion Talk Radio Network is here. The First Amendment of the Constitution grants us freedom of speech. That's the freedom to express our views and opinions.
You can call in 716-213-6816 to discuss topics that you like. If you have questions about anything, you can also do that. Not that I claim to have answers to all the questions, but usually the questions fall into some kind of category. And usually I can break down the whole category. So most of the times the question is trying to scratch the surface, but we need to get to the roots. So categorizing helps in that sense. If you have a question about money, for instance, you dive into economics. Or if you have a question about God, you dive into theology, things like that. And theology was also mentioned by Dorothy here. And I think indeed that if you believe in God or not doesn't matter. It's like having information about how other people do believe in these kinds of things is helpful, especially when you know if someone does believe in the Bible, for instance, or in the Quran, or in the Vedas, or any other so-called sacred texts that are out there. And it is also, I think, a question you should answer for yourself. If theology is of vital interest to you, or if it is just for you to know the facts, the grammar, so to speak, of it. It is important in the sense that they say, well, if you don't believe in God, where are you going to get your morals from, right? Sometimes you hear that argument, and of course, that is no argument, because there is an inherent to your being is a sense of right and wrong. That is why normal people have empathy. Okay, psychopaths and the like don't. That's how you can single them out, like Madeleine Albright, for instance. When you hear her speaking about the sanctions that were laid on Iraq, killing all the children, you see her response on that. You know she shows no empathy. She has no empathy. She is not a human being in that sense. She is some kind of other human, a psychopathic kind of human. So to say that you can't have morals if you don't believe in God is missing some grammar, namely the fact that as a child you do know damn well what's right and what's wrong. You don't need a Bible for that. Let's see if we can continue here. Last couple of things from Dorothy's speech at an Oxford class in 1947. Mathematics, algebra, geometry, and the more advanced kinds of arithmetic will now enter into the syllabus and take its place as what it really is, not a separate subject, but a sub-department of logic. Oh, it is neither more nor less than the rule of the syllogism in its particular application to number and measurement, and shall be taught as such, instead of being for some a dark mystery and for others a special revelation, neither illuminating nor illuminated by any other part of knowledge. So, mathematics, she says, is tied to logic, a sub-department of logic, and then it has to do with number. Okay, now what I heard from others who have spent more time digging into the trivium than I did is that the number one is union, and the number two is the first division. The number three is the first number. And the number 4 is enclosure. And the number 5 I don't remember, but if I'm not mistaken, it has something to do with generation, as in life generation, regeneration, regrowth, or growth. And number 6 is the first perfect number. And there's the second perfect number between 1 and 100, or actually between 10 and 100, and that's 28. And there appear to be a more perfect number is. I don't know what a perfect number is, but between 1 and 10 it's 6. Between 10 and 100 it's 28. And then there's one between 100 and 1,000. And this reminds me of a little thing I read, also diving into the trivium. And they were talking about Vedic mathematics, and that was kind of strange. They have a different use of the zero, and they are able to, for us, complicated, not divisions, but times, what do you call that? 6 times 6, so what's the times? A better word for that. Anyway, they had like numbers like 1,089 or 1,073 times 1,006 or something like that, and they had very easy ways of getting to the right answer in like 3 steps. And they did it by saying, okay, well, there's this number here. We got the number 1,070, for instance. Actually, they say that is 1,000 and then 70. And they somehow tear the number apart and then bring it back together again at the end. I'm going to try and tie the number and theology together. And they said that 1 was union, and 2, the first division. Now, 1 can be seen as the one God, and 2 could be seen as the one God dividing himself or itself. You can see that back in Adam and Eve, for instance, where you get man and woman. That's the first division, man and female. And you can see that back in Indian mythology as well, where Shiva is dividing himself. He's the one, and he's dividing himself into 2. Shiva and Sita, his wife, man and woman. And so from 1, we get 2. And then the next step would be 3, which is mother, father, and son, like Osiris, Isis, and Horus. The first triangle. They are the first Trinity, I should say, which is a hoax, by the way. Trinity is a hoax. It's an idea taken from old, as far as I know, they are the oldest, so that's why I'm saying taken from, but maybe they copied it from somewhere else. Anyway, it's from the Vedas, where they have a trinity called Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. There's all kinds of new agey radio out there that will bring this stuff to you as if it is fact. It's no such thing. You could even check that out for yourself, by the way, in real life. The claim that the Vedas make about this Trinity is that it can be seen once a year in a certain mountain range in India. So go and check it if they appear. The Brahma, the Vishnu, and the Shiva. Because they won't. We would have had all kinds of evidence of that. Okay, so the claim that the Vedas are making that you can see this Trinity is not real. The whole Trinity is fake. It has to do with very hard to understand ideas, especially when you're talking about the middle one. Brahma is pretty easy to understand. He's the creator. He created the universe. Shiva is also pretty easy to understand because he's there to destroy everything. He's also called the destroyer. He is the one that you could... Gee, my English really is lacking sometimes. You could compare to Jesus coming back on his white horse with a sword to hack off all the heads. Okay, he's vengeful. So, the middle one, however, you can't even start to talk about him because everything that you say lacks. Because everything that you say manifests itself in this material world. And Vishnu does not. He is not in this world. He is of a different energy. Alluding to Jesus when he says, my kingdom is not of this world. Okay, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about the Vishnu. The one, that's the one. That's the only one, actually, in their mythological beliefs. He is the source of Brahma and Shiva. Brahma and Shiva are simply living beings like you and I. You can become Brahma if you want. You can become Shiva too. But you cannot become Vishnu. That's impossible. It's a very strange idea that these Indians have. But it is useful in the sense that there are many trinities, like family, for instance, mother, father, child. In that sense, it is real, but not in the hocus-bogus ideas that the religious nutcases try to pin on you, that there is a God, and that there's karma, and that you must pay for your actions. You go to hell if you don't abide by God's rule. Freaking nonsense. That's the idea of karma, also from India. Karma means action. It doesn't say anything about reaction. It has the Vedas have a lot of information about certain actions leading to certain results, but karma itself means action, no more, no less. And there is a usable philosophy regarding action, in the sense that you can act and then expect a certain result. If you do expect a certain result, it means you have tied yourself to this material world. However, if you can act without attaching to the result of your actions, you will find yourself in a life that is much less stressful. Okay. Let's see. We were at history, continuing. Don't think I'm going to finish this today to the end of it. So if you want a complete PDF, send me an email at solvinor1@yahoo.com and I'll send you the link to the email, a link to the PDF. You can also drop in the chat room right now at solvinorradio.com and pick it up right there. She goes on about history, aided by a simple system of ethics derived from the grammar of theology. Yeah, what did I just talk about? Will provide much suitable material for discussion. Was the behavior of this statesman justified? What was the whole thing about justified is also very nasty when it comes to theology, especially if you have ideas about the soul and it being indestructible and eternal and unchangeable and more kinds of absolute properties that they throw around. Because that is the way that they will make you accept killing humans. Because they say, well, we're not killing humans. The soul is indestructible. You see? It's dehumanizing. Let's see if we can continue here in the speech that Dorothy gave. What are the arguments for and against this or that form of government? Right. That's a loaded question. I haven't... Look, there is no good form of government as far as I can see. And the problem is not only the government, though. We're always going to have a government that is going to screw us over if we don't wake up. So even if you had a good government, it wouldn't be of much use. Because the corruption is going to creep in anyway. And here some people say that, a New World Order would be fine as long as it's bona fide, okay? And that's rubbish. Even if you had a New World Order that is in place with all the good people, within 50 years, it's corrupted. It's been replaced with people that have infiltrated. That's what we see all of the time. Governments, even though they may start out fine, they get infiltrated. At the moment, we have been infiltrated, the governments have been infiltrated by corporations, or corporations have been infiltrated by governments. You could say both ways. They work together. It's a fascistic rule. And the laws are not put out there for us humans. They are for the corporations, like Monsanto, for instance. Monsanto must die, as far as I'm concerned. That concern must die. It should go away. They are killing our environment. They are killing us, as a matter of fact. If we keep eating that crap, we will be extinct in a couple of generations. Because the stuff sterilizes you. Not only that, because the food that they provide is genetically modified, and you, as a human, use the genetically modified DNA to build up your own body. Yes, that's what your body does. It uses the food partly, not all of it, but partly, to build your body. You know, you got a new body every 7 years. It's completely replaced except for some vital parts that seem to stay, like in your brain or in your heart. There are certain molecules that stay, okay? But all over the whole, in 7 years, your whole body is completely renewed, except for some parts, like I said. So if you keep eating that stuff, that genetically modified stuff, you're not going to be human anymore. Because the food that you eat has been genetically modified. It's the biggest monster out there as far as it's even worse than chemtrails. Monsanto must die. Where was I? Oh yeah, I was talking, she said there was the arguments for and against this or that form of government. We need awake people. Don't care about government. The government is going to screw you over if the people are asleep. No matter what government. So, continuing, we shall thus get an introduction to constitutional history. a subject meaningless to the young child, but of absorbing interest to those who are prepared to argue and debate. What is this? Constitutional history. I don't know exactly what she means here, but I don't know if she's talking about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and things like that. And this is, of course, 1947, but I'm guessing that already then they were nibbing away at the Constitution. And as far as I can see, today it doesn't mean a thing anymore. Continuing, theology itself will furnish material for argument about conduct and morals, and should have its scope extended by a simplified course of dogmatic theology, the rational structure of Christian thought, she says, clarifying the relation between the dogma and the ethics and lending itself to the application of ethical principles in particular instances, which is properly called casuistry. I don't know that word. C-A, why do I say cow? Casuistry, whatever. C-A-S-U-I-S-T-R-Y. Geography and the sciences will all likewise provide material for dialectic. But above all, we must not neglect the material which is so abundant in the pupil's own daily life. There is a delightful passage in Leslie Paul's The Living Hedge, which tells how a number of small boys enjoyed themselves for days arguing about an extraordinary shower of rain which had fallen in their town. A shower so localized that it left one half of the main street wet and the other dry. Could one, they argued, properly say that it had rained that day, or on or over the town, or only in the town? How many drops of water were required to constitute rain, and so on? Arguments about this led on to a host of similar problems about rest and motion, sleep and waking. Rest and motion is a nasty one. I figured this out as a child, and it was reiterated by William Roberts in one of the radio shows that I did with him on time and space. Because if you take a ruler, it is one of the first instruments that I used to play with, you see that it's divided, at least here in the Netherlands, it was divided into centimeters and meters, right? And you have inches and things like that. Anyway, I'm thinking like, hey, I'm looking at these stripes on the meter, and I'm thinking like, what's going on here? I can put more stripes on there if I like. As a matter of fact, I can put an infinite number of stripes on there if I like. And so if something is moving, it is actually crossing the infinite. And that's impossible. So there's a little strange thing going on there. That may be one of the reasons why they give absolute properties to things like soul. Let's see, where were we? She's talking about arguments. Arguments about similar problems, about rest and motion, sleep and waking, est and non-est, or be and not to be. And the infinitesimal division of time. The whole passage, that division of time is another way to see that motion is pretty much a strange thing. Because you can't grab now. There's the past and there's the present, and in between there's the now, but you can't grab it. You can't pinpoint it, because when you do, it's gone. And that's another hint as to the illusionary reality that may arise. The whole passage, continuing, is an admirable example of the spontaneous development of the ratiocinative, whatever that is, faculty, and the natural and proper thirst of the awakening reason for definition of terms and exactness of statement. All events are food for such an appetite. An empire's decision, the degree to which one may transgress the spirit of a regulation without being trapped by the letter, or on such questions as these, children are born casuists. Gonna need to look that word up. Maybe have something to do with cause and effect, I'm not sure. And their natural propensity only needs to be developed and trained, and, especially, brought into an intelligible relationship with events in the grown-up world. The newspapers are full of good material for such exercises. Legal decisions, on the one hand, in cases where the cause at issue is not too abstruse, on the other, fallacious reasoning and muddle-headed argument, with which the correspondence columns of certain papers one could name are abundantly stocked. Yeah, I wonder if there's one without it today. Whether the matter for dialectic is found, it is, of course, highly important that attention should be focused upon the beauty and economy of a fine demonstration or a well-turned argument, lest veneration should wholly die. Criticism must not merely, though at the same time both teacher and pupil must be ready to detect fallacy, slipshod reasoning, ambiguity, irrelevance, and redundancy, and to pounce upon them like rats. This is the moment when precise writing may be usefully undertaken, together with such exercises as the writing of an essay and the reduction of it when written by 25 or 50%. Yeah, I remember that. I don't know why, but apparently I wasn't doing well enough in my own language, and my dad decided that I needed extra education, and he sent me to this tutor, and this tutor made me write an article, and then he made me remove 50%. And I was like, what did I write it for if I'm going to remove 50%? Anyway, it will doubtless be objected that to encourage young persons at the pert age to browbeat, correct, and argue with their elders will render them perfectly intolerable. My answer is that children of that age are intolerable anyhow, and that their natural argumentativeness may just as well be canalized to good purpose as allowed to run away into the sands. It may indeed be rather less obtrusive at home if it is disciplined in school, and anyhow, elders who have abandoned the wholesome principle that children should be seen and not heard have no one to blame but themselves. The teachers, to be sure, will have to mind their step, or they may get more than they bargained for. All children sit in judgment on their master. And I seem to have missed a call there. And if the chaplain's sermon or the headmaster's annual speech day address should be any chance afford, an opening for the point of the critical wedge, that wedge will go home the more forcibly under the weight of the dialectic hammer, wielded by a practiced hand. That is why I said that the teachers themselves would have to have undergone the discipline of the trivium before they set out to impose it on their charges. Once again, the contents of the syllabus at this stage may be anything you like. The subjects supply material, but they are all to be regarded as mere grist for the mental mill to work upon. The pupils should be encouraged to go and forage for their own information, and so guided towards the proper use of libraries and books of reference, and shown how to tell which sources are authoritative and which are not. A rather strange word in there, huh? Books. Towards the close of this stage, the pupil will probably be beginning to discover for themselves that their knowledge and experience are insufficient, and that their trained intelligences need a great deal more material to chew upon. The imagination, usually dormant during the birth age, will reawaken and prompt them to suspect the limitations of logic and reason. This means that they are passing into the poetic age and are ready to embark on the study of rhetoric. The doors of the storehouse of knowledge should now be thrown open for them to browse about as they will. Yeah, that's another thing that really bugs me. I mean, seriously. It's our language, right? We speak it. But why then do we have to pay for encyclopedia and dictionaries? It's ridiculous. That information should be freely available. But no, it has to be somehow pay for things that we use. It's ridiculous. It's our language. Who decided that someone could say, okay, I'm going to write down these words, now you're going to pay for it? Doesn't make any sense to me. Who did someone say, this is my language now? And nobody else can speak it unless they pay me? Get lost. So, they should be open for them to browse about as they will, indeed. The things once learned by rote will now be seen in new contexts. The things once coldly analyzed can now be brought together to form a new synthesis. Here and there, a sudden insight will bring about that most exciting of all discoveries, the realization that a truism is true.